Well, UConn to the Big 12 is very much alive and possible. And that's as reported by basically every major college athletics reporter out there at this point. Brett Yormark never gave up on the Huskies after pursuing them last year, but does it actually make sense for the league? Would it be setting the Big 12 up for long-term potential monetary struggles? As in, would this dilute the amount of money each school is making long-term? Plus, does it even make sense for UConn? They are now back in the Big East, a conference that fits them geographically, fits them with regional rivalries, and obviously fits their basketball program, which has now won back-to-back national championships. We'll digest it all here in this video. And if you are a Big 12 fan watching this video or a UConn fan and you think you might want Big 12 news, make sure to subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. If you want to be the smartest Big 12 fan in your group chat, that is the way to do it. No SEC or Big 10 BS here. You're getting all the college sports news you want through a Big 12 lens. You can sign up at ofbnews.com or click the link in the description. Now, the story was first reported officially by Andrew Marchand and Justin Williams of The Athletic. But as I said, everybody across the board has come out with different versions of the story. From the Athletic version of the story, Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark has renewed his pursuit of expansion target UConn, with league officials set for a meeting next week where the issue will be reintroduced for in-depth discussion. According to sources, if the Big 12 did accept UConn, its football program would not join the league until the next TV rights contract, or at the very least for several years. If it's the next TV rights contract, that is 2031. And for the other sports, basketball included, they could join as soon as 2026. That's according to Brett McMurphy. So here's the deal for the Big 12. I actually think that this makes quite a bit of sense for the league. It's a calculated risk. If the reporting is correct, and football won't be a part of it until 2031, which is the next contract, and it won't cost you any money now, which I certainly have to believe that, I think this does make a lot of sense. You'll lock down basketball as a complete slam dunk here if you are adding UConn to the league. UConn has won the last two national championships. It's an easy argument right now that they're the best college basketball program in America, especially since Dan Hurley spurned the Los Angeles Lakers to stay as their head coach this offseason. You add them, you literally have the last four national champions in the sport with Kansas and Baylor before the back-to-back UConn run here. You can also gain some ground financially, and I'm speaking beyond just the obvious here of beefing up basketball when we've talked about the Big 12 decoupling the basketball rights and eventually selling the basketball rights as one deal, the football rights as another. Look, the Big 12 has been trying to get creative with a bunch of money-making ideas, right? Whether it's private equity or selling the naming rights. And a lot of the pushback has been, well, hey, why would you do that? Because even if it works out, even if that does do a lot of good for you, it's going to be copied by the Big 10 and the SEC. They'll do it bigger and better, and the gap will just stay the same or continue to grow. The same fear has been out there about the basketball decoupling. If you're going to sell the basketball rights separately, there's been a lot of chatter that Greg Sankey of the SEC is eyeing that and saying, hey, that's actually pretty smart and a really good idea. So you might just get one-upped by the SEC again there. But if you add UConn, all of a sudden, you have something the SEC is not going to be able to replicate. You will have way more basketball firepower than they do. You will undoubtedly make more per school from that basketball contract than what the SEC is going to make for theirs. So you've closed the gap a little bit, even if Sankey were to try to do the same thing for the SEC. You're guaranteeing yourself at least closing the gap a little bit. And there had been the period of talk about Kansas and the SEC because of this idea from Sankey that, hey, maybe we do want to do this and separate basketball and beef up our basketball league. Well, if he's going to take Kansas, this is a little bit of Kansas protection. If you have UConn and that kind of a basketball power in the league, that affords you a little bit of backfill, preemptive backfill, basically Kansas protection there, if there is any real threat of that, which certainly we could debate the merits of all of that. So I like it for all of those reasons. You're tripling down on basketball with this move. Nobody is going to be able to touch you as the best basketball conference. The only pushback there has really been about the Big East lately, and now you're taking the crown jewel of the Big East, which is very harsh to the Big East, I might add, who just signed a new media deal. But them's the breaks in conference realignment, unfortunately, as Big 12 fans know very well. Now, the risk, of course, as I mentioned, is that this could be a bad thing financially long term. The risk is that UConn football never actually develops the way that you want it to. And so when you go to sign a new deal in 2031 that's just football, your revenue is going to be diluted a little bit per school because UConn is adding nothing of value and the TV networks aren't interested. And now you have another mouth to feed to split the deal an extra way. It's unclear whether support among Big 12 presidents has increased in light of the latest round of discussions. Any further expansion will require support from a supermajority of 12 of 16 members in a presidential level vote. So, as I say there, you have to get support from across the board here, and the risk is football, and that seems to be drawing some legitimate pushback right now, and that was certainly echoed by Pete Thamel as well. So can Brett Yormark convince them that there's enough potential with football to make all the dollars and cents work long term? And in many ways, I view this kind of like the private equity pitch. It's a big help to the league now with basketball, and you're not even worried about adding football, but would you be writing a check you can't cash later on because of UConn's football struggles? And they have been struggles lately. 6 of the last 7 years, they've won 3 games or less. They're living the independent life right now, which is really, really tough. And they're actually the last holdout other than Notre Dame now, with UMass moving to the MAC. So that's not an easy way to live as a football program at all. Here is a bit from Brett McMurphy that tries to pitch the growth and development plan basically for UConn in football. Although UConn's football program hasn't had a winning season since 2010, the belief is that being a part of the halo of the Big 12 would help build the Huskies' football success, a source said. The source brought up examples of the football programs at Arizona and Kansas, which struggled in past seasons, but are coming off impressive 2023 seasons. And you've heard me talk about it here on the channel. I mean, they're both teams that are in the discussion to make the Big 12 championship game this year. So turnarounds can happen. UConn has played in a BCS Bowl before. And according to Pete Thamel, UConn officials have pushed the fact that they took off with football success after joining the Big East in 2004. So we have seen somewhat of a precedent there. I think another concern with this and coupled with football is how financially can UConn pull this off, because their athletic department has had a lot of struggles financially. They had a $53 million deficit during the 2022 school year, which had to be subsidized by the university. They had a $47 million deficit the year before. So this has been a long-term big problem. I will say they did get it down by 35% to $35.8 million deficit this past year. So there has been progress there, but you're looking at a landscape here of college athletics where now you have to find an extra $20 to $30 million per year just to be able to compete revenue sharing wise. So can you buy that UConn will get their football program better when they're going to have to figure out their finances? That is a difficult proposition for UConn, no doubt. So I understand the skepticism there. You don't want to get stiffed with a bad football product in 2031 that's going to further dilute the payouts to every school and maybe cancel out whatever you would be making on the basketball front there. It is rolling the dice. There is no doubt about that. How does UConn actually feel? That's another piece of this, right? According to The Athletic, the main desire for UConn joining the Big 12 would be to boost its struggling football program, which has been an independent since leaving the AAC. So the idea here is UConn's looking around like, man, college athletics is changing. We can't really have a football program survive as an independent. We've got to join a conference. The Big 12 is a huge lifeboat as far as that's concerned, and potentially gets us a lot more money. Even the college football playoff payouts would be substantially more in the Big 12 than they would be as an independent. So it's a finance thing for the UConn athletic department, trying to bet big on themselves, even though I understand, and I've seen this on social media, UConn fans don't really want to leave the Big East. Like, there are regional rivalries there. It's a great geographical fit. It's a lot that makes sense there, but it's all about your long-term future in a realignment world. And the other piece of it is the Big 12 is probably going to expand east at some point. You guys know my stance on what's going on with the ACC here. I think we're likely headed toward an ACC implosion, which will open up schools like Louisville, schools like Pitt, maybe a Virginia Tech, a Syracuse, something like that from the ACC that could be more regional-ish partners for UConn that would make it a little bit more palatable. And above all else, I mean, you want to make sure that you're satisfying Dan Hurley, your basketball coach, right? Well, Dan Hurley, who just said no to the LA Lakers to stay at Connecticut. Here's a quote from Pete Thamel's story. UConn men's basketball coach Dan Hurley is not against a move to the Big 12. He loves the Big East, but he understands the Big 12 provides more resources and more money. It's according to Pete Thamel's source. So it sounds like Dan Hurley's on board, which would be a huge hurdle to clear. And that would suggest to me that UConn is probably pretty hell-bent on moving forward with this. Having said all of that, I mean, nothing is imminent. According to Thamel at ESPN, his story put a little bit more cold water on this than some of the others. He reports there is strong pushback from some members in the Big 12, and the Big 12 presidents aren't yet involved. But there will be a Big 12 board call next week to lay out more specific details about the Huskies case. So this is clearly escalated in terms of how serious it is here. And we know Brett Yormark is going to continue to push. So look, there's a lot to break down here. I'm going to do it on a live show, so make sure you're tuned in tomorrow night for a live show to discuss that, and I can take all your questions, and we can parse this all the different ways that we want to. So let me know what you think in the comments. Are you in favor of UConn to the Big 12? If you're a UConn fan, do you like this? Let me know what you think. Like the video, subscribe to the Big 12 newsletter at ofbnews.com, or click the link in the description. Appreciate all of you guys, and I will talk to you soon.